On this episode of Dinger Ball, Logan and Jacob draft their MLB team of the decade, and we'll post them on the show notes for you guys to see. But first, here's a clip.
He probably has one of the higher percentages as a pitcher of losing one-run games.
I've been waiting for the world to spin my way. I've been waiting for a chance, and I think it's finally come. 'Cause after all, I don't care what they do, and I don't care what they know, and I don't care what they say about me now. 'Cause no one can touch me now.
We might as well jump into a really good segment, something that we haven't done here before, and is going to be really, really interesting. So we're going to be doing a live draft of the team of the decade, and we're going to have each our own team, and we're going to put it up on Twitter, and we're going to have a poll of who we think has the best team after the end of this. We're going to test our drafting abilities, and we're also going to test some of your, intellectual abilities. So this will be interesting. We can post the whole entire roster that we have here in front of us on our notes of the podcast, and we can also go ahead and post our teams on social media for everybody to see. But this is something really interesting, and we're just going to go ahead and do this. And as we go along, we're going to talk about why. I'll let you get first pick. I'm a giver. I'm caring about other people, and I know who you're going to pick, so it's fine. No, you can pick whoever you want first. Doesn't matter.
All right. Well, my first pick is very obvious. It's Mike Trout. He's going to be my center fielder. Obviously, he has the highest WAR this decade, and it's not even close to second because he is 20 points higher than the number 2 player this decade with WAR. And obviously, we sit here and we talk about him every single episode. It's every episode there's been some conversation about Mike Trout. And there is a reason why. He is the best player in baseball right now, and potentially one of if not the best player in history.
I wish that I could have picked him, but I was being nice. I let you have him, and he is a stud, man. As simple as that. He is a stud.
He's the best baseball player right now.
I think that mine is a little bit maybe interesting. And it might be interesting to some people. And it is Miguel Cabrera. And I have a few reasons why. I think that he's been very, very good over this past decade. And I believe he was a Triple Crown winner in 2013, if I'm correct. You look at his past stats over this whole entire decade. Although he wasn't impressive over the past 2 years, every other year was really impressive. And you look at it, in 2010, he had 38 home runs, 126 RBIs. 2011, 30 home runs, 105 RBIs. 2012, 44 home runs, 139 RBIs. 2013, 44 home runs, 137 RBIs. And he also batted .348. This man is good. He's seriously good, and he's going to be a Hall of Famer someday, and the past 2 years aren't indicative of what he's really capable of or worth. So I think that he is by far the best first baseman out there, /DH, in this past 10 years.
Yep, I 100% agree, and it's kind of funny because you basically kind of stole my pick, but you didn't, because that's the guy that I wanted to be my first baseman or DH, because he is on this list twice. He is also a DH, so I really, obviously... You can't say enough about him. He was on that Florida championship team in 2003 as well with the Marlins. He's just a top level player. He's been a great guy. Obviously, he's gonna have decline. He's getting older. He can't do the same things he did when he was a kid or when he was younger. But he is still a phenomenal baseball player.
I completely agree. Now, who do you got?
DH, I'm gonna go David Ortiz. Because you know what? This is our city. Boston strong, baby. And just
that's a big woof.
He is a top tier player. He was a great hitter. Obviously he was slow. There's no denying that part. But with game on the line, you needed a base hit. Big Papi was gonna come through. And he is loved by that city. is adored by the fans. His teammates loved him. He has everything you could possibly want in a DH. He is a good team player. He does everything you ask of him. He even would play first base if you asked him to. He did it for Boston for years. And he is just a very, very solid hitter, which is what you're looking for in a DH.
I can see what you're talking about with him, and I respect that. I really do respect that out of him because he was a talented player, and he should be a Hall of Famer at the end of the day. And sadly, I mean, he got injured this past season whenever he was down in the Dominican Republic, so thoughts go out to him, but I think he's talented, and I think he deserves what you talk about, and he's one of the best DHs of all time. When we talk about the conversation with that, I mean, you have Paul Molitor, and you definitely have him up there, so I don't fault your decision at all. I have somebody else in mind for DH, and since you already picked yours, that's fine. I'll leave him till later on. But my next pick, is Robinson Cano. A great second baseman. And second base, didn't really see too many talented players over the past 10 years. You look at it, and he had a rare blend of power, and he also, wasn't a bad fielder. He wasn't awful, and he really gave his teams a really good chance to win baseball games because he was with the Yankees and obviously didn't win a World Series with them because they didn't win a World Series the past 10 years. That's something we didn't talk about. That's something I'm happy about, and hopefully they don't win one over the next 10. just for fun, because it just feels good. They already have enough. They're okay. Give it some to the other people. Let the other people play. But he was talented. I mean, he had like 4 years in a row of almost 100 RBI production. He had about 4 years of around 30 home runs, especially with the Yankees, and he really was good. And he's batting around 300 the whole entire time. He really hasn't fell apart until this last season with the New York Mets, but you really can't fault him.
He also got injured this year with the Mets too.
Yeah, he's 37, but when you look at it, he has one of the hardest hit percentages this past season. He also has one of the top exit velocities. So does it really matter that much? I mean, like, if he wouldn't have got injured, he would have probably been better off. But he's a top-level player, and I think we're going to see him play for a couple more years, and he's still going to be elite.
No, I definitely agree. He is a good player. I think there is a better option at second base, but, I mean, that's just me as well. But obviously, I'm not going to pick a second baseman right now. That would be dumb. I'm going to jump over, and this is a little bit I'm being nice to you, but I also think he's the better player. For my catcher, I'm picking Buster Posey. Obviously, I'm going back to what I said with Mike Trout, the basic argument of WAR. Do you want to know who was number 2 on that list?
Who?
Buster. He was number 2. He had like a 53.6 WAR over this decade. Obviously, and that's including the fact that he's been injured multiple times over this year. He had to learn a new position to play first base because he can't catch the same anymore. And that's just the reality of the position. Is he got beat up a lot. He's had multiple concussions. He has been the most collided with catcher in the decade as well. In his career, he has had so many collisions at home plate that have knocked him out with concussions. And he still put up the second highest WAR of the decade. He is a leader behind the plate. He knows how to manage a staff, which is extremely important. I'm sure it's not always easy having a guy like Jake Peavy on your staff. Like, that probably wasn't easy for him. Jake Peavy's a hothead that's hard to handle. And then you got to deal with him. And then Madison Bumgarner, I feel like kind of just is, I'm going to do things my way as well, which isn't always easy to handle. And there's a lot of personalities. That's a big part of catching that kind of gets overlooked. And he's also just a phenomenal defensive catcher. And he had a good stick as well. He always found ways to get on base, and he had a little bit of pop as well. So he's going to be my catcher for this decade team.
I respect that. And I'm kind of thankful that you picked him out of all people. And that makes me happy inside. Because then...
Yeah, I knew that would too. That was the other part of it. I just felt like being nice to you since it's Christmas time.
Exactly. But I'm going to go on the opposite spectrum of catcher. But we'll save that for later because you can't pick another catcher at the moment. I think I'm going to pick a third baseman here. And I think that I'm going to pick a guy.
There's a lot of options.
I know. And I think I'm going to be picking a guy from Texas. I'm going to be picking Adrian Beltre. And let me tell you why. This guy was consistently good. He was just batting .300 for 3 years in a row. I mean, consistently good. 30 home runs, almost 100 RBIs. He's the kind of guy you want at the plate at any given moment. And really, at the end of the day, at the end of his career, he wasn't the best player. But, I mean, that's what happens at the end of people's careers. They usually go downhill and they're turning into an average player. But this guy was leading the league consistently in certain things like average, home runs, RBIs. He was just consistently very, very good at that, and he was just talented. I mean, obviously, he helped Texas get into a couple playoff appearances and also a couple World Series appearances. My good friend David Freese, probably the playoff moment of the past 20 years right there, just right in front of him. It happened in front of Beltre, not really any fault of his own, but he couldn't do much to win that World Series that he needed to win. So I think that Adrian Beltre was absolutely talented, and I think he's absolutely worth of it. And he's also going to be a Hall of Famer someday. So, I mean, who else would you want to pick?
I mean, I don't agree with you. I do agree he is a great player, but I think there is a better third baseman out there on that list. So, but I'll save that for later because obviously I'm not taking my third baseman yet. That's going to come in a later round. I'm going to be the first guy to take a pitcher off the board.
Oof.
And it's a guy that I know you like him too, and I think there's very little argument against him other than the fact that he plays on a horrible baseball team that is going to be getting better, and that's Jacob deGrom, starting pitcher from New York Mets. I mean, back-to-back Cy Youngs. Always in the conversation for a Cy Young. He will be for probably the remainder of his career, if I'm being completely honest. He is just a top-level starter. He's gritty. He throws the ball well. He keeps it low. He keeps his team in games, even though his record does not show it, because obviously, in order to win games, you need to score. And when he's holding you to 1 or 2 runs, he probably has. I don't know this off the top of my head if this is true or not. He probably has one of the higher percentages as a pitcher of losing 1-run games because he loses games like 1-0 or 2-1. Than any other pitcher in the league. I'd venture a guess with that, with the way that some of his starts go. He is just a really good starter, and he always finds a way to keep his team in games. So that's kind of what you look for out of a starting pitcher.
There was some absurd stat with him that I think it was like 20 games or something, that he pitched in, they lost by like 1 run, and they were like, I don't know, like he allowed 1 run or something, and they were like 1-19, or I don't know, it was some stupid stat that was just like, how does he pitch so well, and his team is just like, yeah, I'm gonna head out right now. I'm not gonna play. I don't want to score any runs.
Yeah, you handle this on your own. If you want to win this game, you got to score yourself.
As a pitcher, that's tough unless you're show high, but
I mean, or I've seen Shark did it for the Cubs once. He hit the game tying. He drove in the game tying run in the 9th, and then the game winning run in the 12th, and through the entire game, he gave up 1 run.
It's just such a big tough moment.
Jeff Samardzija, what a guy!
He's a good guy. I love him. Yeah, I guess
miss him.
I might have to go into my next pick here, and you left him on the board a little bit long. I'm glad he's still up there, but that's Clayton Kershaw. I mean, this guy, one of the best pitchers in the regular season of all time. You look at him, and I mean, over the past 10 years, he pulled records of like 21-5, 21-3, 16-9, 18-4, 12-4, and he had 3 seasons alone where he was under a 2 ERA. And then he had just one season, count it, one, this past season, where he had over a 3 ERA, and that was a 3.03. And he wasn't the Clayton Kershaw of past, because, it just kind of happens. He's getting older, and he's also has a little bit of injury bug. I think especially with his back, he has some issues with that. But I mean, he's been good, and he had a 6-year stretch where he didn't allow a whip over a 1, and it was like a .95 was his highest. So yeah, I think he definitely deserves to be on this list. And I think he is the best left-handed pitcher on the whole entire list. So you look at some of his stats, and it's just kind of impressive. Even in his later part of his career right now, he's 31, and his fastball spin rate is one of the tops in the games, even though his velocity really isn't. So it's kind of impressive to see the ability of him to spin the ball, because spin rate helps you out in the long run, and it'll help you keep the ball in the ballpark most of the time. He doesn't allow balls to get hit too hard off him, and he also has a really good, everything else. I don't know what else to really say about him. His curveball is fantastic, and I think maybe over the next couple days or weeks, we might post some videos relating to some of these pitchers and talk about some of their pitches and some of the best pitches over the past 10 years. Talking about Clayton Kershaw and his curveball, talking about Chris Sale and his slider, talking about other people, maybe even bringing back some of Trevor Hoffman and his changeup, and just posting some of those on our Twitter page.
Trevor Hoffman would be interesting to
Yeah.
watch. He had one of those filthy changeups. And no, I totally agree with you on the Kershaw statistic. He would have been a guy I would have liked to get, but I just think DeGrom is a better starting pitcher than Kershaw, to be completely honest. And I wanted to make sure that you didn't get DeGrom, which is why I went him first over Kershaw. And that's a tough one to lose, but I think there's another starting pitcher on that list for left-handers that I think might be able to top Kershaw almost, just based on like you mentioned, postseason success.
Absolutely.
But I'm gonna jump into my next pick, and I'm gonna go ahead and take take my second outfielder, and I'm gonna take left fielder Christian Yelich. And a lot of this is based on post recent success, but obviously you can't take out what he did the last 2 years. I believe he in 2 seasons, I think he was either close to or broke the record for most home runs in a 2-season stretch. There's something crazy like that. He just is consistently doing the right thing, consistently driving baseballs into gaps. He's also a very solid outfielder. Now, he's not going to be a top-level outfielder, but there's no way of proving this. But that play that the Washington Nationals scored on, where the right fielder made the error, the rookie did, Christian Yelich makes that play 9 times out of 10. And that's just kind of how he is. He does everything the right way, which is a big part of this as well. And on top of that, he is a stud. He is an MVP candidate, and we are going to be sitting here for years to come talking about, honestly, the Yelly and Belly show for the MVP race in the National League. That's just how it's going to be. And occasionally you might get a starting pitcher or just an upstart guy that's in that conversation. But those two are going to be continuously in this conversation.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I see that becoming a trend over the next few years. You really can't disregard his most recent success, because he's been really successful with what he's done. And he's going to be really good over these next 10 years. And he'll still be probably one of the top players as long as he doesn't get injured very often, and as long as we see him be the player he really can be. But I'm going to move on to my next pick, and that's going to be right field, and that's going to be Bryce Harper. Come on. What do you have to say about this guy? He's really, really good. And was he worth...
He doesn't know what city he
doesn't know.
In.
He is a genie, and he probably has been to the future, so he knew that if he's like, hey...
No, he didn't. He has not been to the future. He just talked to Matt Groening. We had this conversation.
I don't know, man, because think about this. Think about the way that things are shaping up for Philly. And you look at it, I think that he made some type of deal once again, and he was like, man, if I go to Philly, I have a better chance at winning a World Series, multiple World Series, because are the Washington Nationals really going to compete again? I would say no, but that depends on if they sign Donaldson and if they sign a couple other pieces to really couple them into the top contender spot again. But that's for later on. I think that what Philly's done is really impressive, but this is more about Bryce Harper. Because you look at him, he was a phenom, and when he was coming out of high school, people were talking about him big time, and he delivered with that. Because you looked at it in 2015, he had 42 home runs and 99 RBIs. He was a leader on that team, and he's been consistently good in the outfield. Now, his average hasn't been nearly as good as you want, but I think he has above average speed, and he has an well above average exit velocity and hard hit percentage. So I think that he has a lot to offer to a team, and I think that he's really, really talented. It's just a matter of if you can get it all to click like it did in the 2015 season when he batted 330 and he had 42 home runs.
Okay, yeah, I definitely agree with that one. I think there is a better option in right field, but I mean, I guess I don't really know if that's based on his right field statistics because he's been more of a DH recently, but we'll get into that a little bit later because I'm gonna jump into I'm gonna go ahead and take a shortstop this round, and this is kind of the hardest one because they're all so evenly matched. To be honest, out of those that list of guys, obviously you can go with. I think I'm gonna have to go with Lindor, just because he's just the easiest guy to argue for. I feel like out of those 5,
Mm-hmm.
all the rest of them have one thing that they do better than the rest, but Lindor is kind of that guy that can do it both ways. He's a solid hitter and he's a good defensive shortstop as well. I wish Javi was on this list because I would easily pick Javier Baez and just let it roll. I mean, you can argue like the strikeout rates for him, which is probably what didn't put him on those lists. Is probably one of the main reasons. But Francisco Lindor is just a solid player. He doesn't make a lot of errors defensively. He is very fluid. He has a strong arm, which is all things you look in for a shortstop defensively. He also has pretty good range, going either direction, which is a plus. And then he's got the bat. Obviously, he can kind of stroke it to both. He can stay gap to gap. He also has some pop. He can hit the ball out of the park. And then the third factor you really look at is he's quick. Obviously, he's the one that got us the free taco in that World Series against the Chicago Cubs. He's the guy that got the Taco Bell free taco. He stole second. So he's kind of got everything you look at for a shortstop to me, and the stats kind of speak for themselves. He does the job. He's a very solid guy to have on your team, and he's probably going to get traded here pretty soon. There's a lot of rumors with him, so he won't be in Cleveland much longer, which is going to help his career as well at this point.
Yeah, and I respect that pick. I really do. I have somebody else in mind at shortstop, but I'm going to make my pick for the first relief pitcher of this whole entire thing, and I'm going to pick Kenley Jansen. And let me tell you why. Just for the pure fact, I mean, he's been there the whole entire 10 years. He's been in the league 10 years. He has been an effective pitcher for 10 years. I mean, his ERA has been roughly under 3 for 8 of the 10 years. And the past 2 years, I mean, his ERA was 3.71 this year, and the year prior it was 3.01. So, I mean, he's right around there, and he's been a solid relief pitcher for 10 years. And most people don't understand how hard it is to be a relief pitcher because usually most relief pitchers are one-trick ponies. You have a guy who has, 105-mile-an-hour fastball. That's his trick. People figure it out. I mean, Roldis Chapman is kind of the same way. We'll probably talk about him later. But you have people who have that one thing about them. But, I mean, Kenley has his cutter and his slider. And they're both fairly effective most of the time. And I think that's what makes him successful in the long run because he's been consistently good at saving games for the Dodgers, and he's pitched over about 50 innings every single year, I would say, except his first season. He pitched 27 innings, and his ERA has been fairly competent, and he's really just been a solid pitcher because you look at it, he strikes out a lot of guys. I mean, his strikeout to walk over his whole entire career is about 9-1. So he strikes out 9 guys for every 1 guy he walks. And that's pretty impressive. His career whip is a .91. And, he has a tendency to allow home runs every once in a while. But, I mean, that's just such his life in this new baseball era. So he has 57 home runs. But I think he is fairly good.
No, I like that pick. There's gonna be a lot of good relievers out there, but like you said, he's got that longevity. He's been with the same team, and he is a very solid reliever. I'm actually picking a reliever too for my next one, but I'm going with the left-handers, and I'm going to take Zach Britton. And obviously, you can go ahead and point out the strength of Zach Britton is his 2016 campaign, where he had that .54 ERA, which is unheard of, and he was a contender for a Cy Young, which does not happen with relief pitchers. You very rarely see a relief pitcher have that happen. I mean, he's not a strikeout guy. He gave up 4 earned runs in 69 appearances during that year. He had 47 saves. I mean, .84 WHIP, just just a dominant starting pitcher. But I mean, even you can look beyond that. The the 2 years leading up to it, he was a 1.65, 1.92, and then point 2.89, and then he kind of had 2 injury plagued seasons in 16 games played in 2018, 25 games played in 2018, just not success and wasn't that successful, which really honestly those 2 years and his early years before he became a true starter and or true bullpen guy for them and true like full-time guy really dragged down his ERA, his career ERA. And then even this year, he's a 1.91 in 66 games for the Yankees, and that was it's a big part of their success. And he is a very good left-handed option out of that bullpen, and he's more shifty, even though he still has that hard throwing fastball. He has better off speed stuff and he's more crafty than like Chapman is for them out of the bullpen, which is just another added bonus for Britain.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And I think that, it's an interesting pick. And since we've all picked one category, so we're kind of pigeonholed in who we can pick, we can go ahead and fill out our rosters here and discuss about each player we pick, and then kind of like I'll fill out my roster and you fill out yours. So I think for my catcher, I have to pick Yadier Molina, and that's not a bad thing because he's been a solid hitter at the plate. He roughly bats about a 285 clip, which is something that most catchers really can't do. And for the longevity of his career, because he's been up since 2004, you really don't know what else you need out of a catcher. He is a solid guy behind the plate, and the way he handles the pitchers is very, very good. Especially you can see it in the Cardinals pitching staff that a lot of the pitchers he's handled has been really, really effective, and he's also been a very solid, competent catcher in throwing out runners. And I think that's something that's very interesting about him, and I don't know what you think about him. But
Obviously, I like Yadier Molina. Obviously, he's a good catcher. And as much as I hate him because I'm a Cubs fan and I don't like the way that he is cocky whenever he comes into Wrigley and stuff like that, like you've seen it. It's not even when he goes in Wrigley. He's cocky all the time. But that's just kind of his personality, and he's allowed to be when you're that good. But I didn't think he was as good as Buster was. I think Buster Posey is a better catcher overall than Yadier Molina, which is why I picked Buster Posey as high as I did.
he's a better hitting catcher, and I'll definitely give you that much because the way that Buster can hit the ball, it's almost unheard of that a catcher hitting a ball like he does. Joe Mauer did it for a short clip of time, but you really don't see that very often. And then I'll just go rapid fire into my next pick here at shortstop, and it'll be Andrelton Simmons. And whenever you think of his name, he is synonymous with just being the fact that he's a really good fielder. And that's something that I like about him. And then he's also no slouch at the plate. He'll bat about a 250 to 280 clip, and you're going to get a decent hitter out of him. You're not really asking for a lot out of a guy who saves as many runs as he does. And that's kind of his MO, and that's something that I love about him. And I think that over time, people will say, the shortstop class of this past 10 years has been a little bit shallow, as we saw some shortstops come in late, like Francisco Lindor, but make a big impact. But I think, just for the lasting impact, I think Andrelton Simmons was pretty good.
Yeah, obviously the other guys talked on this list. Like, I'll go into it now. I wasn't going to say anything until you made your pick, but Simmons is the defensive guy, and he doesn't have much. He doesn't offer much at the plate, which is what drew me away from picking him. But the other guy that it's really hard for me not to pick just because I really do love him. I used to play with him all the time in every video game because he was a elite shortstop at one point in his career. Was Tulo. That was the other guy I was looking at, to be completely honest. I think Tulowitzki is a great shortstop, but he was like he was just like a quick flame. He was on, and then he was just kind of disappeared. He was really hot when he was with Colorado. He left Colorado, had all his problems, got injured, went to Toronto, I believe it was, and just kind of fell off the face of the earth, I feel like almost. And that's what made him a really hard guy to pick.
Yeah, I completely agree. My next pick for left field would be Mookie Betts, and a guy as talented as him. You look at what he's done. I mean, just in his short 6-year career. I mean, man, he has 139 home runs. He has, he's batting 301 for his career. He has a lot of talent in him, and he consistently leads the league in a lot of important categories like doubles, triples, also hits, RBIs, walks. He's pretty much the whole entire package. And when you look at him, he has a very elite exit velocity. He has elite hard hit percentage. And, I mean, he has a really good jump in the outfield. He has good sprint speed. And he is one of the most elite weighted on base average. So when you look at him, I think that he's a really, really talented player. And I think that he's somebody you really can't miss, even though he missed, 4 years of the 2010s.
Okay, yeah, I can see that one as well. I mean, obviously he was a good player. It's hard to not pick Christian Yelich from that
Yeah, I mean,
list.
he's already gone, so I have no choice.
Yeah, Christian Yelich is just hard to not go after on that list for me personally. That's kind of what made my decision to go there.
And then my next pick would be at center field, and that has to be Andrew McCutchen.
Yep, that's number 2 right there.
And, he's absolutely talented, and he is very, very good, especially with Pittsburgh. You think about Pittsburgh and how good they were, and he's what you really think about. I mean, he's not really a physical kind of guy. He's 5'11", 195, but the way he played the game was really, really big. 'Cause, I mean, he would consistently hit about 25 to 30 home runs a year, and he would just be always in the face of everybody else in the NL Central. When you ever thought about going to Pittsburgh, you're like, man, we have to go against Andrew McCutchen. And, I mean, he's a stud. That's simply put, he's a stud. One fun fact about him, he never hit over 100 RBIs in his career, which I think is pretty funny. But, I mean, he had a couple years there where he was batting well over 300, and he was smoking baseballs left and right.
Yep, fair enough. I mean, obviously, you can't take the number 1 pick at center field because I got the first pick. But McCutchen is a very solid option, and honestly, he was a great center fielder, and he probably, if he can return and be even close to what he was in Pittsburgh for the Phillies, that just adds a second scary element to that team now.
I mean, exactly. And he's somebody who's, pretty scary. Just to think about like how good he was at a certain point of his career. And then we'll keep it rolling here, and I'll go on to my next pick, which is a right-handed starting pitcher. And it's one guy who made a recent resurgence, and that's Justin Verlander. Justin has been extremely like his old self with the Houston Astros these past couple of years, and I'm absolutely here for it. I mean, he was on Detroit for many years, and he's part of a lot of really good teams with them. Consistently going over 200 innings every single season. And you look at it, his ERA, his worst ERA in the 2010s was 4.54 in 2014. And that was kind of like people thought he was done, he was over, but then he went right back down and he was going in the right direction. And then with Houston, you've almost seen a point drop from his like other 2 prior years with Detroit, which is something interesting because he's like around a 2.5, but he's been really talented, and it was kind of hard picking him over Max Scherzer, former teammates, but I think he's definitely worth it.
No, I like it. That probably would have been my number 2 right-hander as well. I mean, I'm never gonna pick him over obviously DeGrom, but yeah, I definitely would agree. He's definitely up there, and he deserves everything he's gonna get, and he's still going strong. He's almost getting stronger with age, which is kind of scary.
Exactly. And my next one is just kind of fun to talk about. It's Aroldis Chapman. He threw like really, really hard. So I think that's just kind of I'm sliding that one in. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, but he blew World Series games for the Cubs.
He was overused in that World Series. Changed my opinion.
He's just a baby.
Yeah, he's not Madison Bumgarner, and you can't expect him to be Madison Bumgarner and just go out there every single game and just absolutely hurl. So I
mean, I just expected him to be able to give one inning an outing. That's all we needed. One.
Hey,
he got mad for throwing one inning in back-to-back games.
Some people don't want the limelight. I guess he didn't want it. And then my last pick, my favorite pick, the DH, the guy who absolutely wallops baseballs, a guy who is just absolutely amazing, and that's Nelson Cruz. I mean, he's slow as molasses, but man, the way he hits that baseball is in the top percent. He's like the hardest hitting player, I believe. Like his exit velocity is just consistently 93.7 on average. I mean, that's insane. And the amount of times he barrels baseballs is 19.9%. And if you also watch the top, I think, home runs over the past 10 years, he's like 6 of them. He's just good. And he mashes baseballs, and his swing is beautiful. And the way that he can just go up there with an approach is absolutely insane. I mean, he strikes out a lot, but you're willing to give it up for the way he hits the ball. So I think that's an obvious pick for my DH.
I mean, I'm going to disagree just because I love David Ortiz, and I still think David Ortiz did all of the stuff you just mentioned as well. He was a top-tier designated hitter. He is slow, yes, but his job is not to be fast. He's not stealing bases. The only way he's stealing a base is if he gets to the backstop and the catcher trips. But that's not his job, and those two guys are key examples of why the DH is great, because it allows guys that just hit the crap out of the baseball to have a position, and that's the big part of why I kind of do like the DH, but I still don't want it in the National League. Let's just keep it where it is. That's the way it should be.
Absolutely.
All right, I'll finish up my list. I'll start over my first baseman, a guy that I'm sure you have to at least agree. I mean, he definitely belongs on this list, and I'll even bring up the most amazing stat about him in a minute. But it's Joey Votto, at first base. Obviously, you can talk about the patience, the leadership. He is a solid glove over at first base. I think the craziest stat about him is he has popped up 8 times in his career. He has 8 pop-ups in his entire career. That's what most guys do in a season. Most guys do more than that in a season, and he's only done it 8 times in his entire career. That's one of the most impressive things. He stays through balls better than just about anybody. He has solid contact, solid pop numbers. He finds ways to get on base, and he finds ways to put the ball in play, and and put the ball in play and a chance to give him a chance to be successful. And that's part of the reason why I liked him at first base. For my team.
He's impressive. I'm not going to lie. And that fact about him popping up 8 times in his career, completely understand why he picked him first base.
Yep. And then for my second baseman, I'm gonna go with Jose Altuve. And that's just based on the fact that, you took Robbie too. But I think Jose Altuve is a very, if you want, punch per size, he is the best hitter in baseball. For his size, he probably has more power in that bat than guys that are twice his size. But he's 5'6"? He's not gonna be able to hit the ball as far as a guy that's 6'6", 6'7". He's not as big as him. But he has a lot of pop. He's got a strong arm at second base, which you don't see a lot of. I guess you do now more than ever, but you didn't used to see a lot of that. And he's got a solid glove over there. He can really turn double plays pretty successfully for Houston, which is another big part of second base, is being able to make the turn. And that's why I put him as my second baseman.
The thing that worries me about him is just his size alone and the fact that he doesn't hit the ball very hard. And that's why I didn't pick him. I picked Robinson Cano. A guy who's just absolutely wallops on base.
Jose Altuve has some pretty decent pop in his bat, but it's got to be the pitch he's sitting on. He can't miss hit home runs. So I do agree with that.
Yeah, his exit velocity was one of the lower ones in the league, and his hard hit percentage was also one of the lower ones. But where he makes up for it is his speed and also his fielding ability. And he's just really good at ball placement, and I think he knows where to place his bat. He has very elite hands that help him get into the position to be successful and make the ball have the proper launch angle for him to be a home run.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. But you still do have to have power to hit the ball like that. Like, you can't sit here and tell me that anybody could do that at his size. He does have little bit of power, and he does generate enough power to be successful.
I do agree.
Yep. And then over at third base for me, I thought this was going to be the end up being the guy you picked. Like, I do understand your picking of Beltre, but it's really hard to argue with a platinum glove. And that's Nolan Arenado. He has a platinum glove this year. He's a multiple gold glove winner. Probably one of, if not the smoothest hands in the infield in the entire MLB. Chapman's got an argument as well, but Nolan Arenado is very smooth with the glove. And he also has some decent power in his bat. I mean, then we can go. Obviously, there's a little bit of a stigma because he plays in Coors,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, he still is very successful. I mean, he has hit 40 home runs 3 times this decade, and he's been in the 30s twice. Like, he's a very solid bat. I mean, he's always right around 300, which is what you're looking for of a top tier third baseman. And then just that glove and that arm strength just adds that extra element, which is what made me want to put him on my list.
I can't say that you're wrong. I think that he's a talented player, and I think that he has a lot of potential to be the best player in the league for those past 10 years. But I think that his limited track record kind of hurt him a little bit, and also the fact he plays in cores impacts him just a little bit. Um, I mean, for the long run, I think that I would still choose Adrian Beltre over him because Adrian was a talented player. I also loved his personality. And I think that was something that was very different about him.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely agree. Him and Andrus
Exactly.
or Andrus, like they like that video that they used to play all the time on MLB's Twitter page was hysterical of those two. It's like the "You Got a Friend in Me"
Mm-hmm.
song, and they're just like screwing around with each other. I definitely agree with that part
I
as
think
well.
Elvis Andrus too. He was my runner-up for shortstop, just for fun.
He was my third pick because I was thinking Tulo and then him for number 2 and 3.
And I think that he doesn't get the credit he deserves, but yeah.
No, he definitely doesn't because he was overshadowed by Adrian Beltre. All right, I'm gonna jump into my next pick and I'm gonna do my right fielder, and that is JD Martinez. I I just think his stats. I mean, we can go down the list. He has batted over 300 for the last. How many years is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and he's batted over 300 for 6 of the last 7 now. Like, that is an impressive statistic. Ever since he left Houston back in 2013, he has been just a hitting machine. There's been one season where he didn't hit over 20 home runs. He only played 57 games in that season. And he stays gap to gap. He is a solid hitter. Obviously, you saw him come to Boston, and he's got 43 home runs and then 36 the last 2 years. The strikeout numbers have been a little bit high the last 2 years, and he's kind of always been a guy that's going to strike out, but you're going to trade that for the amount of home runs he's going to give you and the amount of pop you're going to get out of that bat. So I definitely think JD Martinez is my right fielder.
I have no arguments about this one. I mean, his weighted on base average is pretty good, and I mean his exit velocity is elite. So you look at him and he hits the ball hard, and he hits the ball out of the ballpark. I have no arguments.
Yep, and I'm going to jump into my left-handed starting pitcher. I think it's the one guy on this list that can genuinely rival Clayton Kershaw and maybe even be a little bit better just based on what he can do and the grit he has in the postseason. That's Madison Bumgarner. I mean, we all saw it against Kansas City. That was a ballsy performance. He went out and threw a gem, came back for Game 7, and threw 4 innings out of the bullpen to literally drag that team into to a World Series championship. Like, that was impressive. He has that weird, funky delivery that's really hard to decipher. He's got a great cutter, great curveball, and he's got a good fastball. And he's hard to hit. He's hard to beat. And I just think that he is an elite starting pitcher. And I mean, obviously, it's kind of sucks. It's the timing. He's gonna start declining. He was injured the last couple of years, a couple times, I believe. I think it was 2 years ago. Whenever there was that huge fight with Bryce Harper, where he just walked back into the clubhouse instead of running out there because he had like a broken bone, so he didn't want to get in the middle of it. And like he's just a top level starting pitcher, and I think he is still going to be successful in the future. Maybe not the same guy we saw in that World Series appearance, but you look at what he did over this past decade. He's probably one of the better starting pitchers in the decade.
I completely agree. Um, he had a fractured metacarpal, whatever that means, and that's why he was out in 2018. And he was also injured in 2018 as well, whenever he had
I mean, 19,
2017, whenever he had, yeah, he had
17.
17, whenever he had a bruised rib and also sprained left shoulder. I believe that was from an accident, might have been.
Yeah, it was a dirt bike accident.
And he had like 7 years where he didn't get injured, so that's pretty impressive. I don't think he's as good as Clayton Kershaw, and I don't think anything will ever really change my opinion. I think he's a better postseason pitcher than Clayton Kershaw, and there's no doubt about that one because his one performance in the postseason is unmatched, and he's going to go in legends down like, I mean, David Freese. David Freese, man, those two together are just legends. Whenever it comes down to it, the player who was pretty above average over the course of their career and then just absolutely shined in the one moment they needed to.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it going that way too, but I honestly just his postseason ability puts him way over the top of a lot of other guys. On top of the fact that he has been a above average starting pitcher as well. He's gonna win you games. He's gonna do everything he needs to do to be an ace, which is why I put him on my list. And I'm gonna jump into my last pick. For my relief pitcher, my right hander, I'm going Craig Kimbrell. And obviously, we can start with the best season. I'm going to start with his best season. Uh, that not a lot of people really know. Like, probably when you think of Craig Kimbrell, you think of the Boston Red Sox World Series win when he was just very successful. But, like, I'm going to go back all the way to 2012. He had 63 appearances, 42 saves, a .65 whip, 101 ERA, and 116 strikeouts. He gave up 700 runs that year, and that is just impressive. And we can even go back to his 2010 season, his rookie year. He had 21 appearances and gave up one earned run as a rookie. This wasn't a bullpen appearance. He was 4-0. He had one save. He wasn't really like a back end of the bullpen closer situation, but he had a .44 ERA as a rookie in 21 games. That's very impressive to me as well. And you can keep on going through this list. Like we can go career stats. He's a just above a 2 ERA, .95 WHIP. Obviously, like you talked about with Kenley, very successful. The only difference is he's been around. I mean, and this year really hurt him a lot. If you take out the 2019 season with the Chicago Cubs this year, where he had 23 games, he came on late. Like he was not ready to be in that situation yet, and he kind of just got thrust into it after not really getting like a normal offseason to prepare. And he was just that season was horrible. But up until this year, he has really not had a season that's just been horrible, where you just sit there and just think, yeah, like he should probably forget about that. And that's just kind of the way that Craig Kimbrell was, and he still is. And I think that he was a top level bullpen arm for the Braves, the Padres, and the Red Sox in the past decade.
I think that he was really talented. You just subtract this last season, if it's possible. Everything else,
Yeah, let's just forget about that
everything
one.
else he did in his whole entire career was pretty impressive. You look at his first season with the Braves with a .44 ERA, and then you look at the 3-year stretch where he threw 60 innings apiece, and he had around he had a 1.01, 1.21, and a 1.61 ERA. I think that alone is pretty talented. And then you look at the 2017 with Boston when he had a 1.43 ERA in 69 innings. That's nice.
And look at his strikeout total from that year too. Like
Talent.
what was it, like 128, I think, or 148?
Yeah, 126. And that's just, yeah, with the
126.
.68 whip. So he was just excelling and not letting people on. I think this last year was uncharacteristic of him because that's not the pitcher who he really is. And you look at that and you look at his whole entire career, maybe he wasn't ready for that moment. And also pitching in Chicago had a little bit of impact on that, and those two compounded, and it really didn't turn out to be the best for
Chicago is where pitchers come to die if you're not named Jake Arrieta.
him. Whatever it's about him, man.
No, it's the big beard. That's why. If you're in Chicago, it's windy, it's cold. You got a big beard, you're set.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we got our teams now. Let's see what people think. We're gonna send these out on Twitter, and we're gonna let you guys vote on them.
I'll let you vote. And the loser, there'll be some stipulation to the loser. We'll decide later on, and we'll put it on Twitter.
We'll have this conversation next week sometime.
Absolutely. And then we
Yep.
can let our guests
We'll talk
decide
about
too, whoever our guests will be in the future.
Once again, guys, thank you for listening. I think that's all we got for you guys tonight. Hope you enjoyed it. I know this was a fun episode for us to do, kind of throwing together these team of the decades for both of us. Obviously, there's gonna be a lot of argument because we are not the same person. We think differently, and it's kind of fun to see other people's opinions. We'd like to get your guys' opinion too. If you guys can find this list, I believe is this on MLB.com. If you guys can go ahead and you can take a look at it, send us what you think your top your lineup would look like. I mean, we'd love to hear what you guys think as well. Once again, reach out to us on Twitter whenever you get a chance. Make sure you check out dingerball.com. A lot of good stuff going up from the entire crew there. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
Absolutely. Until next time.